Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the City Till We Died podcast from Milestone Podcast, episode number 10. We have made it this far, and I really can't think of a better way to mark the milestone than with a new manager podcast. Adam Harvey joins me, Ben Ambrose, and we sort of said it before rolling, didn't we, Adam? It's time to talk about something new. What a pleasing thing. We're so pleased that, and I'm sure maybe, normal business will resume next week, but we finally get to actually divert our attention to something that you could argue is quite exciting, which is that Norwich City have appointed Philippe Clement, which I hope the pronunciation is okay. For ease of access, we might just call him Big Phil, Big Hard Phil, for the rest of the pod. At face value, very exciting. It's not a name that we've spoken about at all. It's not a name that we dreamt of. And I don't mean that in the sense of he is our Lord and Savior and he will come and save the day. It's just simply a name that really came from far away, didn't it? And for us, it's exciting. Me and Adam have spoken about it a little bit in terms of not on the pod, and this is almost a chance for us to exercise our beliefs and thoughts. And yeah, it should be quite interesting. Adam, first and foremost, happy new manager day, new head coach day. I don't know what we want to call it. First and foremost, how do you feel?
Yeah, I'm probably in the camp of people. I've seen a few of them now on socials. I know these manager sort of appointments always are a little bit divisive, and you very rarely get one that's kind of universally, liked or disliked. There tends to be different camps, and I think I'm in the camp where I'm impressed by him as an individual and Norwich going out and being able to attract him, given their kind of current situation and where they find themselves in the division. You look at kind of his pedigree as a head coach, pretty much everywhere he's been, maybe except Rangers, but then I think there's a lot of mitigation, which I'm sure we'll delve into for a spell there, has been successful. I think he's a winner as a player and a coach, and that's what I felt this group needed, someone that could go in and galvanise them, someone you look up to and probably feel a little bit of respect for, somebody who's been around the game and won things where, not to kind of be disrespectful to the likes of Liam Manning, but you kind of look at his sort of CV up to his arrival at Norwich and never really materially done anything on sort of a major scale. As much as he deserves credit for maybe some of the work he'd done at different clubs and the way he built them, the foundations for maybe future success, he'd never actually took it to that next level and won things. And I feel that Clement's done that, which is probably one that's going to end up with egg on my face, because I think for me, he's one that I look at and maybe comparatively to some of these other arrivals in recent years, I've got a little bit of excitement about. I know it's easy in kind of the early interviews to say the right things, but I felt, having sort of watched it just before we recorded, that most of what he said, I like the sound of. And of course, the proof's in the pudding, and that will be judged over the coming months. But yeah, I feel for where Norwich are at, and maybe comparably to some of those other managers that were in the frame, he excites me a reasonable amount, and I think Norwich have done well to get him.
It, for me, off the top of my head, feels like one of the, I'd say probably the most pedigree a manager has had in my lifetime. There have been names, even recently, such as, dare I say it, Dean Smith, who have had that Premier League experience where it's a name it's a career that you almost recognise. And David Wagner, again, a great example of almost a Premier League cult hero and the job he did at Huddersfield. But they feel very sort of minuscule compared to Philippe Clement and what he's done in the game, because he's not done anything in England. But he's, as we'll get into, he's played and won in European competitions. He's managed some, household names in football, which I'm genuinely almost shocked that Norwich City have managed to almost tempt him into it. And I think the point you made is bang on with, he's never been quite able to sort of see something through. With Genk and Bruges, that felt like almost the beginning, and he did a fantastic job there. And again, I'll almost read the fact file in a minute that I'm sure all us content creators will be reading from the same sheet. But Monaco and Rangers, those journeys for him were almost cut quite short, weren't they? And he could never quite take that next step. And at both clubs, I think he did an immaculate job, especially at Rangers, as you say, in some tough circumstances. And Norwich City for him perhaps is, and for me, immediately a green flag that we as fans know the potential, but we're biased. But someone who, from an objective point of view, is looking at the potential of a club because it's there, it's clear to see, but has that belief and that confidence that they can be the person to not only drag it out of the mud at the moment, but to sort of push it into, the positive future that hopefully lies ahead. But again, we've got one clear challenge at the moment, which is to sort of not get relegated, and who knows how quickly that objective can change. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to rattle through what we know. This isn't going to be a massive tactical breakdown because I don't really think it's not the kind of conversation I want to have. What I want to have is what do we know, and what do we want as fans from him, because it's a fan channel, isn't it? And yeah, so let's start with Genk. Won the league with them, and from my reading, typically it's Anderlecht or Bruges in the Belgian Pro League that win that division. And I read it's not a miracle that he won with Genk, but it's a pretty good achievement for his first sort of full season as a professional manager. And that was in the same season that Daniel Farke won the championship with us for the first time. So a very memorable year. He then went to Club Bruges, who he spent 2 and a little bit seasons at, and they are probably, as I said, one of the favourites to win that division. But to win it twice and get to the group stage of the Champions League, and win games in the Champions League for what is a very well established, a well run. It's a household name in Europe, but I think that's more through professionalism rather than achievement, if you know what I mean. To go in there and do that is clearly why he got the job then at Monaco. Took them from 6th to 3rd, and then was relieved from his duty when they were, I think, in 6th place again. But that League On season, they were 2 or 3 points off 2nd place, which I think is remarkable. You've got some really good teams in League On, and typically PSG win it, right? We know that, but it's still a competition. 2nd place still isn't too bad. And with that squad, I had a look at the squad that he had in his full season at Monaco, and it's not a bad squad, but equally as someone, and I feel like the people watching it would be like us, perhaps not the most well versed in European football and more England focused. The only name that I recognise from there, I think there was Kevin Volland, but I know him through FIFA, so I'm not going to pretend that it's because I know who he is through his Bundesliga achievements. But Disasi is the only other name that I recognised because he plays in the Premier League now. So for me, impressive. I don't want to get too carried away with it. He then went to Rangers, and Rangers, as we know, not an easy club to manage. There are some lofty expectations there, and it was called a rebuild, wasn't it, essentially? And the goal, from what I read, and there's a brilliant video that the Pink can put out. Connor spoke to a Rangers journo, watched it, brilliant, really recommend it. Got a lot of my knowledge about his time at Rangers from it. And he was tasked to rebuild Rangers and almost get them competing with Celtic again, because in terms of the old firm derby, the tide was very much sort of, I don't know, yeah, well, it was, wasn't it, of a green and white persuasion. But he did a great job there. He got them a couple of points behind Celtic, and won a, whatever they call their cup competition, and almost got Rangers back ticking again. And as Russell Martin has recently experienced, the man who replaced him, the expectations of Rangers fans are not to be messed with and are not to be taken lightly. And the fact that he managed to get them ticking again, and playing, some decent football, from what we read, is a great achievement. And the sacking, the departure is the sticking point. It's that, oh, okay, why was he relieved of his duties? And it just seems as if things almost broke down. And this video that I watched with Connor and the guy, he was really battling some difficult circumstances above him, in terms of the ownership, and people in high power roles having to go off ill. And yeah, by the sounds of it, I feel more empathy rather than fear and dread that he's going to be taking over here. And it's not our job to sit here and talk about that in fine detail. So again, go and watch that video. But yeah, that CV, Adam, what do you think sort of drew him to Norwich?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess the fact that when he went to Genk, I think they were in a sort of difficult situation at the time, and he sort of managed to sort of impart his sort of playing style on that group and start to slowly build. And obviously, eventually, that led to success in sort of the coming coming seasons, and you kind of look at that and maybe where Norwich are at the moment, that feels like it's kind of aligned. And that Rangers spell, having sort of maybe worked with some British players, but for me, I think what I like the look of is the fact he's heavily worked with European players, which you look at kind of Norwich's core squad at the moment. It involves a lot of them, and some of those players maybe that Norwich have are players that he's looked at with Rangers particularly. I know Jose Cordoba is definitely one that obviously he was in post at the time when it was kind of Norwich and Rangers battling out for his signature, and the fact that he wanted him at Rangers and maybe felt that he could fit that style, that for me breeds confidence into my feelings that he is the right fit for what maybe Norwich have currently got in the building. And yeah, I think his Rangers spell, you sort of outlined it a little bit there. From the sort of reading that I've kind of done over social media and kind of sort of doing a little bit of digging, I guess, last night through Google, maybe right man, wrong time at Rangers, kind of where they were, and the fact he wasn't really backed in the transfer window, and that obviously, as you said, is the expectations there are through the roof, and I think maybe the expectations here aren't anywhere as close to kind of being as high as that, particularly this season. For me, survival in the Championship is got to be the goal from where Norwich are at the moment. Of course, if he can slowly build them up the league, then great. But I think the focus now has got to be more on just getting out of the mess they're in, building for next season. And he feels like a manager who has built things before, but also has that sort of firefighter ability to get teams out of sticky situations. So when you look at that, and maybe who else was available and sort of the other names in the frame, I know a lot of people maybe like the look of Gary O'Neill, and we spoke about it a little bit on the last podcast, but he wasn't really someone I looked at and felt as a coach he would come in and could really seriously sort of get Norwich out of the mess and then build them. I know he's maybe laid foundations at previous clubs, but not enough in it for me. John Dale Thomason, interesting in the sense that I think he done a good job at Blackburn and kind of with limited resources managed to get them slowly climbing up the Championship. Maybe struggled to get them into that top six a few times, sort of falling just short. But yes, it's a risk go for Philippe Clement because never managed in England before, never managed in the Championship, and we know how brutal the Championship is. But I kind of look at him and his profile, and I can't help but kind of look a little bit at what Sunderland had when they brought in Reggie Lebris. That was a club that was maybe sort of tumbling a little bit downwards in the Championship, and maybe, of course, not in the situation Norwich are in, and they find themselves in the bottom three when he arrived. But he had sort of a group of players there, some European, some British, some young players as well, and that experience that he had having sort of worked, well, in his situation in France, but, you know, Belgium is not massively dissimilar. He managed to get the best out of that squad and sort of build them into the Premier League, and is, of course, now doing a good job there. So if he could emulate anything like that, then great. And of course, I'm not, saying that that's going to be what he does here, but yeah, I feel it's more exciting than maybe some of those other names that are in the frame. But of course, time will tell.
Yeah, I think it's one for the players as well, isn't it? It's not just perhaps a bit more of a plan and a structure that will be sort of put before them and more of an idea, really. I think the name is one that actually, if they go and do their homework, if they didn't already know who he is, will be one that will just instantly strike confidence and the feeling of, oh, actually, hang on a minute, yeah, let's take ourselves serious. And you mentioned sort of him. You mentioned Clement and the similarities with the Sunderland guy. But one thing that's slightly different, which I like about Clement, is when you say profile, it's the physical profile. He's massive, right? He looks hard, and from what you see of him in the media, he does not take any nonsense. For me, and again, very clearly, never played football at a very high level at all, but I like the idea that actually the head coach is there to be the boss of the players. I don't think it should be quite like it maybe was in the old days. I'm not going to look at him and hope he's the next Sir Alex Ferguson, but Norwich need to clearly draw that line between head coach and players. They are as important as each other, but there is that almost barrier of you listen to the head coach. And I think he seems like the sort of personality to, before you even get into tactics and structure and how your team are going to play, principles. And actually, I think he's probably going to implement all the things that Liam Manning would speak about. So behaviours and stuff like that. I think Clement has got, he's got the clout, he's got the experience, and also the physical presence to perhaps almost beat that into this squad. Whereas Liam Manning was clearly just rather low key, um, and not seemingly particularly inspiring. And from the touchline, I don't know, if I was a player, I can't say I'd be too worried about being bollocked by Liam Manning, but Philippe Clement, as a starting point, yeah, I wouldn't want to get on his wrong side. What, Adam, what concerns you? Like, and I don't expect you to say things that are going to keep you up at night in terms of, oh, what do I need to worry about? But just playing devil's advocate, what about this appointment specifically maybe has you feeling a bit, oh, does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit. I guess the lack of championship experience, given Norwich's current situation where they're at, and probably the importance, particularly of some of the games that are forthcoming. You kind of look at those double header home games next week, and maybe the teams that Norwich are playing and where they're at. I mean, they feel like 6 pointers. Like, I know it's a little bit early in the season, probably still, but that win against Oxford, given that it's only a 4 point gap to them at the moment, that game is absolutely huge. And Norwich have maybe tried the championship experience route in Liam Manning, and that clearly hasn't worked. So you could argue, is it a risk going for someone who is from a background of not having worked in the championship before, and maybe not having worked in England? But as you sort of touched on it there, I think if you look at him as an individual, I would feel as a player in that dressing room, I would respect him based on the fact he's had a playing career, and a relatively successful one. Of course, played for his national team in Belgium, and I kind of wanted someone, I think, who had maybe had that playing career and has now gone into the coaching route, because I think we said it actually on one of the more sort of recent podcasts. You look at kind of the championship at the moment, and some of the sort of teams that are doing quite well in the league, they tend to be teams at the top that have got managers in place that have played and coached, as opposed to just kind of maybe this young and upcoming, coaches that have sort of come into the game that don't really have that playing background. And I think the fact he's got both, that for me is a positive. But yeah, I guess the difficulty is obviously going to be, and maybe the concern I have is maybe his playing style and maybe the formation he favours. In that Norwich have obviously, they're sort of midway through a season, and you haven't now got any more international breaks up until March time. This whole period now is absolutely crucial, and how long is it going to take for him to implement what he wants from this team, and obviously what he expects from them as individuals, both on and off the pitch. Yeah, he's got a battle on his hands, but he's got the experience, as I said, on many occasions to, you'd hope, hopefully turn the ship quickly. But yeah, Norwich can't really ill afford too many poor results in the coming weeks, given that Christmas is around the corner and they've got to get themselves out of this mess and quickly.
Yeah, it feels like those concerns are perhaps more, I don't know, role specific rather than personnel, and almost not aimed at him. It's more just, how the hell is anyone going to come and untangle this mess? Because realistically, the tools that he is given until January are the same as what Liam Manning had to play with, which is a bit like, oh, but also at the same time, as we've discussed, that there are the there are the elements to come on that actually can create that bounce, that can create that new manager hype, and actually, before, as I said, before you focus. I mean, at training, it's something they will do. They'll talk about and discuss and practice the way they want to play. But the first thing he's going to want to do is be like, right, go and run through that brick wall for me, which is why I'm hoping Norwich can have that bounce. And actually, as you said, the upcoming fixtures are massive. And I do not think it's too early in the season to be calling those next two home games six pointer. I really don't, because we've said it time and time again. This division will chew you up and spit you out, and it's unforgiving, and that is the nature of football. And Norwich City need to unpick what is in front of them and solve it. And for me, Philippe Clement is actually a good step in that direction. My next question, perhaps before we theorise about the strategy and the style, is Ben Napper. Where does this appointment leave you with him? Do you feel like you want to sign that petition yet, or has the feeling perhaps gone back more towards the football rather than looking at Napa? Because I feel like there's still going to be that looming feeling, but has this perhaps made you think, okay, right, one more chance?
I still feel that Napper's days at the club are numbered. I don't really feel like this appointment will change a lot, even if Clement comes in and sort of manages to turn the tide, and Norwich start moving up the table rather than down the table. I think maybe the timing of where they're at the moment is the bigger problem. You kind of look at the sort of time where we are now mid November. We're about to approach a transfer window, and is now the right time to relieve Ben Napper of his duties, trying to appoint another sporting director to come in and sort of then have to understand the football club again, maybe the transfer, the strategy, get to know the people within the football club, the scouting team, everything. It feels like that's a lot to sort of all come together very quickly, particularly when Norwich's issues at the moment are very much on the pitch, and Clement is there, and he's got the same group of players to work with, as you said, as what Liam Manning has. And if they're going to appoint a new sporting director right now, nothing materially on the pitch is going to change until January anyway. So, yeah, I still feel that, that Napper's days are numbered. And I think if we get to next summer, irrespective of kind of the success of Clement, I would like to personally see that change, because I feel he's had a couple of sort of goes at the whip now and it's not worked. And for me, even if this doesn't go the way we all hope it does, and Norwich don't move up the table, the pressure isn't really going to be on Clement. He's not going to be the one now that gets the stick. It's going to be Ben Napper again, which is why I think, it's difficult. I don't really see a way back. And when you see a petition being signed by sort of over 1,000 people, that's quite a large number of the City contingent that feel he's not the right man. And I think when there's a lack of trust like that and a lack of faith within somebody, it's difficult, because we've seen it with head coaches where maybe they've been 50-50 and there's been a few on the fence, but as it sort of slowly starts to turn, and maybe even if they get a result, it's that sticking plaster analogy that a lot of managers go to. Inevitably, when results start to turn for the worse again, the pressure just comes straight back on. So, yeah, for me, this appointment isn't really on Ben Napper. The Athanasios feel like they've been more involved, just kind of the way you had Clement speaking today. It was very much talking about the Athanasios and the way that they managed to convince him, and probably the wider hopes and dreams of this football club to reach the Premier League in the future, that maybe sold it to him. He didn't really have much mention of the sporting director, which lends itself to believe that maybe the Athanasios across the pond had a little bit more to say in this appointment.
It's interesting because with Ben Napper, and I've signed the petition. I'm proudly willing to share that, because I agree with you. It's an impending doom. It's there. It's going to happen at some point. But the main call, I'd say concern. The main concern it causes me is if, for example, we get to the summer, Norwich finish, I don't know, 13th, and we're happy with the way that Clement has improved Norwich, and he's brought a style of football, and we have something to build on. If you then relieve Ben Napper of his duties, whoever comes in is going to want to hire their own coach. And it gets very messy when you realise that Ben Napper actually has again dished out a 4-year contract, which I imagine is probably part of how they convinced him to take the job, because he was sought after at Ajax, was a club linked. It's a European giant, Ajax, and who was the French Stade Rennes? That was another team who were probably sort of one of the, what's the word, more strongly linked teams. And I don't know, it almost fills me with a bit of paranoia of, well, hang on, what if this hypothetical turns into reality, and we're in this position where we need to unpick another mess, but equally it's now the 18th of November, and Norwich City have a short-term task to complete, which is to start winning football matches, and perhaps that's where we should focus. And there is the ember within me that Norwich City, under Ben Napper's leadership, can turn it round, and he can improve things and actually sort of almost deem himself worthy of the job. But I don't know, I feel like we've probably watched enough football over time to recognise when something perhaps will or won't change. I almost want to carry on talking about why perhaps Clement wants to continue, to start his journey with Norwich, especially considering the names that were in for him. What else do you think it was? You mentioned his comments about the Athanasios. Do you think that, so for example, the Athanasios recently as per the Pinkerton, have bought that analytical company, haven't they? Which there is almost that option of, do they do what Arsenal did and sort of bring it in house, or do they use it almost as a business to make money from? Personally, I think Norwich will bring it in house and make it their own. But do you think elements like that will sway a manager? I guess they must.
Yeah, I would say that that's got to be a reason. Maybe he feels that he can have a say in kind of the recruitment, maybe, and sort of the wider approach of the football club moving forwards, because he's obviously worked within clubs before, and clearly the fact he's maybe identified players within this current Norwich group who he wanted previously, that would lend itself to me to feel that he wants to be involved in that process. And maybe that's what Ben Napper needs, because it's felt to me for a long time that he's kind of been the one who's been steering everything in terms of recruitment. And we've obviously analysed that most recent summer window, and a lot of those signings to me, and Manning's kind of said this himself really in sort of the days since he's departed the football club, a lot of that recruitment wasn't really maybe players he wanted. He maybe wanted certain individuals, and Napper kind of was like, well, no, these are the players I've identified and we want. And I think while that, that they maybe got the final say, I think you need that head coach involvement. And I think when you look at Clement and the pedigree and the experience that, I've said those words plenty of times, because that to me is where this appointment comes from. It comes from somebody who has got that pedigree to go out there and say, I want this player. And I think you would probably have to go out there and do that for him. And the fact the Athanasios have managed to sway that. And he mentioned it himself, I think, and I feel this, as somebody who's supports the football club and has maybe kind of been within the good times and also the bad times, the strength is the fans. And I think if you a head coach and you've maybe watched Norwich, or you look at maybe the games, and he said it himself, he's watched games, they sell out Carrow pretty much every week. Okay, there's been maybe a few dwindling numbers this season, but I don't really think that's necessarily down to the fans not wanting to turn up and support the team. That's just been because what they've been served up on the pitch has been absolutely woeful, and the maybe pricing structure and some of the politics around, some of the decisions that we've done a lot of talking about in recent weeks, maybe with the stadium developments and everything, has all sort of played into that sort of toxic feeling that surrounds it. But I think at this moment in time, unity and sort of backing the team and Clement as the new head coach is absolutely vital. And he must know and probably has contacts within the game to know that when things are good at Norwich, things can be really, really good. And if you can just maybe get survival this season and lay those building blocks, then I think you could go and attack it next season. I know it's very early and very premature to be talking about that sort of thing, and we don't need to delve into it too much because of the situation Norwich find themselves in. But clearly he must see something here, because with, the names he was being linked to, as you said, Ajax, who I know they've got their own problems, and, other clubs maybe abroad. England clearly is attractive for every head coach. That's and players say it themselves as well. Chris Gordon's probably a good example of that. Somebody in the summer who had options to go and play at the highest level teams in European competitions, and he decided to come into the Championship, and Norwich was the right move for his career. And I think that is still true for head coaches. So clearly he feels that this ship can turn and Norwich can start moving maybe more towards where they keep saying the ambition is the Premier League, and trying to stabilise there. Otherwise, for me, he doesn't join this club where they find themselves at the moment.
Ben Napper, again, to touch on an earlier point of recruitment and involvement from Clement, he has that opportunity to, again, we can talk about the impending doom and almost the inevitability of feeling like he will leave Norwich, but actually, I think he probably could help turn that tide back in his favour if someone like Clement gets more involved. And actually, there needs to be that synergy between head coach and sporting director. And we've discussed, haven't we, that when recruiting, it needs to be, okay, you can have philosophy and you can have your principles as a sporting director. Oh, I'm going to try and sign this kind of player because this is how I want my team to play. Okay, cool. But you need to remember who's managing them. And actually, someone who you've given a 4-year contract should have a say. Sadly for Liam Manning, I almost feel like Ben Napper has had to learn that lesson at his expense, because you can't just sign players and give them to a head coach and say, there you go, mate. And that's before you even look at the fact that, as you say, almost the notoriety that I'm sure he has in the game will attract players. And it's something that I really hope that Norwich in January, and we'll have the discussion at the time. That'll be a post-Christmas job of, right, we've got January to improve this squad. What can we do? I feel like that plays pretty well in Norwich City's favour and creates almost another reason to potentially get excited about the future. as you say, like we've got to keep our eyes on the here and now. We've got to not get carried away, but it's nice to. It's a breath of fresh air. That's what it is. It's an opportunity to. I don't know if you feel a little bit hopeful again. We'll see how we feel after Saturday. Adam, going back to, I don't want to say concerns, but concerns. Um, the other side of excitement, we'll call it that. Personality with Clement, we've bigged it up. We've almost sort of painted the picture of, look, actually this big scary man is going to whip our players into shape. Is there part of you that feels like, oh God, we could have another the end of? And I know it was never really public, and Clement has been a lot more back and forth with journalists than what Thurrock was, and Manning got a little bit spiky towards the end, but equally I think that's just because he was almost worn down and beaten up by the job. Is there that element of, oh God, what if it goes wrong? Or because again, it relies on the relationship with the media, doesn't it? And our mates at the Pink and at Radio North, etc. I don't think you're going to particularly rile him. But is there that feeling of concern about personality that perhaps it might be too big for Norwich City?
Yeah, clearly, as say, he's been in and around the game for a while and coached some big teams, and having sort of delved into maybe some of his interview clips, clearly he's not afraid to maybe back himself and the team and kind of that almost protection, I guess, of kind of the team that he coaches, which I think you can take either way. Dean Smith almost had that arrogance about him, and to an extent that didn't really bode well with the fan base, and certainly not with the media. Some of the comments he used to come out with, and I think kind of trying to build that connection with the fans and the media early on is absolutely crucial where Norwich are at the moment, because results on the pitch will hopefully come with it. And then, we all know connection between coaches and fans is absolutely vital to success. And he's kind of got that job to do that. And I think at Rangers, he didn't, when he first went in there, to be fair, he kind of done that. But maybe when things started to go a little bit toxic, that relationship started to break down between sort of some of the fans and him and maybe some of the media as well. And that's where a lot of this kind of to and fro with the media and kind of, sort of being a bit bullish, I guess, sort of happened to arrive. And that doesn't always reflect well, I think, particularly with Norwich, where maybe we've always been quite accustomed to maybe less big personalities, maybe coaches that are a little bit more happy to sit in front of the media and happy to kind of try and build, I guess, that relationship with the fans. But I guess where maybe I differ slightly on it is the fact that Norwich need results, and I'm not really afraid of somebody coming in and kind of almost being that sort of big figure, to kind of be like, "Phew, yeah, okay, yeah, we need to listen to this guy," and almost be a little bit scary, because if that's what gets results out of these players and sort of manages to turn the tide for the good, then I'm all for that. So I think time will tell on that. I'm kind of reticent to maybe make judgment on his personality until we've maybe had that first initial unveiling and maybe some of the proper sort of questions, I guess, that will be asked at him and maybe how he's going to turn it will be answered. And then maybe we'll get a little bit more of a reflection on him as an individual and his character, and maybe what he's going to bring to this football club.
I'm going to join you up on that comfy fence on the 0.0001% chance he watches this and beats us up as a result. It's a risk we simply cannot take, Adam. I want to move us on to a style, and I'm not going to try and put you on the spot, nor myself, in terms of what he produces from his teams, because it's almost for him to show us. And as supporters, we're the ones there to be entertained. And what I want to ask you is, what do you want from him? Like, if you could sit down with Philippe Clement right now, and he says to you, Adam, how do you want me to fix this? What do you want to see? Not just how do you fix this, but what do you want to see? Adam, get dreamy with it. Be passionate about it. If he was to sit across from you and say, what do you want me to do? What's your answer?
I want to see, for me, it's about entertainment. It's about seeing a team that I associate with, particularly Norwich, which for me have always been best when they're on the front foot, they're attacking, and they want to win games, even in games where maybe it feels like the game's dead and buried. There's almost been that kind of resilience, I think, in a lot of Norwich teams, and all the best Norwich teams have always had that, where they can be 2-1 down in the 90th minute and you still believe and feel that team is going to come from behind and win that game of football, which it hasn't really felt like that for a long time. Certainly, maybe since those sort of Farke days, and Torp to a degree maybe had it in some of the sort of best spells of his time at Norwich, but over the piece wasn't able to sustain it. And I know Clement maybe said that today in kind of his first piece with the club media, and said, I want to bring in an attacking team, one that has intensity, presses high, but also retains that kind of defensive structure, which trying to find that balance is obviously what he's going to have to do. And he's only got the group of players that's sort of at his disposal at the moment. And can he sort of make what's quite a fragile group at the moment, a team that's lacking confidence, that's kind of struggling probably mentally as well, and sort of try and get it in a place where they can, actually execute what he wants. That's going to be the difficulty and the task that faces him. But I think if anyone can do it with sort of what he's done, and maybe the success he's had previously, you feel like he's maybe the one to do that. Where maybe you compared to some of his other names, I feel like he's the one that maybe can do that. So yeah, it's another one. It's like a lot of this will be caveated with time will tell, because it's really difficult at this moment in time to sort of make early judgments until we actually start to see sort of some material, him actually executing things on the pitch. And Birmingham is going to be the first opportunity to see that. And then Oxford, for a lot of the fans in the home game, will be the first time they see a Philippe Clement's Norwich. But yeah, results for me as well. I think, you can play a really good brand of football, but where they're at the moment, if you lose 4-3 every week, it's irrelevant, because Norwich need results in the here and now. And I'd take scrappy 1-0 wins every single week for the next month if it gets Norwich out of trouble.
I think the thing that we can what demand, yeah, not necessarily expect, because it's football and it's a fickle game, but one thing we can demand as supporters to see instantly is, as you say, it's a team that you can see clearly are willing to just run that extra mile. Norwich's issue this season has been fitness, isn't it? We've made comment on, and you can clearly see it's not a squad that looks at the peak of their fitness. That's not going to magically be solved overnight, but they do have energy throughout the game. And when Philippe Clement says, as he does, and as has been reported, that things are about the press, it's about intensity, it's about how can we be on the front foot. It doesn't have to be every second of every minute of every game that Norwich City are playing at 100 miles an hour. Actually, what we can expect is, one, just to see some sort of structure to a press, but also just be smarter with it. Like, pick your moments in the games, and that's where the head coach's job is, to coach and to make these players aware of when that appropriate time is. Because what you typically get in football is, for the first sort of 20-25 minutes of a game, you'll have that really high intensity of, oh my God, it's almost like a game of ping pong. It's a game of basketball where it's one end, it's the other end. Whereas actually what I want to see from Norwich is a team that know when to press. And I'm not looking for it to be almost a routine where we know that Norwich City are going to do something in a specific minute. But what I want is that, as supporters, we can recognise when the ball needs to be closed. I just want the players to have some common sense. And I appreciate that they're the ones out there, they're running, and for as much as they are professional athletes, and almost, they train every day for it, they are human beings. But one thing that I'm looking forward to with Clement is this idea that actually he has that experience of creating teams that can play with a certain level of intellect, and that, again, sort of suits that role of head coach rather than manager, where actually his job is to improve the players and focus solely on that. So that's what I'd like to see. And then from what you read, it's a team that they like to have the ball. And his emphasis, according to reports and opinions, is, I don't want to say it's sort of, I don't know, quite vertical, but it's about how can we get the ball forward, however that may look. There is that infamous clip, isn't there, of an interview where a journalist sort of accuses him of passing the ball sideways too much, but then hoofing it too long too often. And he, again, I didn't really watch him at Rangers. Well, I didn't watch him at Rangers at all. He sort of says, well, which one is it? You can't have it both ways, because they're the polar opposites in football. You either do this or you do this. So I'm interested to see what happens. Again, as Norwich City fans right now, we're perhaps a little traumatized, and there's not a great amount of trust between us and the players, and, well, between us and the club, really. So it will be very much a case of actually get out there and, first of all, as players, prove to us you've got it. because we've not just been battering Liam Manning, we've actually been battering them and talking about the quality of the players. They should get out there and prove to us what they've got as a bare minimum, as a start. And then for Clement, he needs to show us what we need to try and believe in and get behind. I'm looking forward to Carrow Road, would you believe? Next Tuesday at home to Oxford, isn't it? Is it Oxford? Yeah. I'm buzzing for it, which if you'd have said that to me, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago, you're going to be buzzing for Oxford at home, I'd have said you're insane. We're all insane in the head massively for still going to Carrow Road, but it's almost a relief. It's almost a new feeling. It's shock to be excited. And again, let's caveat it with things are not going to be resolved overnight. It's the issues that have existed throughout all of this season. They're going to rear their heads. Like, we're going to see things that we saw under Liam Manning. It's about the response. If we see a slow first half, which I very much imagine we will, it's about right at half time. Clement then needs to do whatever he needs to do. It's tricky enough when you have a full pre-season behind you. It's tricky enough when you have, I mean, all the time in the world sort of given to you to achieve something. When you're thrown in the deep end of some very, very hot water, it's almost impossible. But it's a job that I, as a delusional football fan, believe can be done. Which is, yeah, it's exciting. And that element of what do we want, Adam? I think it's fair to say what we want is a team that we're proud to support, and we're proud to actually go to work and talk about. We're proud to sit in the pub and rant about, rather than, because the last few months has been miserable, isn't it? It's almost been, we have to laugh about it. This is our way of, what's the word? Catharticism. Whereas in the pub, it's depressing, isn't it? Like, you just, oh, how bad were this? How bad were we against? Blah, blah, blah. Whereas hopefully now, we can almost turn that the other way and, get towards the glory days of, oh, wow, what a good performance that was. And maybe we could talk about a win. Wow, how great would that be? We're yet to talk about a win on this channel. That was funny, like 3 weeks in. We are now, what, 3 months in, and we still have not spoken about a win, which I really am praying for. But just to continue that positivity, I feel like Norwich City have got this appointment right. I really do. As a gut feeling, which it's nice to say, isn't it, that we feel like Norwich City have actually put forward something to believe in and to get behind. And as I said, Carrow Road against Oxford, it is going to be bouncing. And Leicester at home, Liam Manning's last game at Norwich, it was good. It felt nice. The first half at Carrow, it's not the best it's ever been, nowhere near that. But actually, given the circumstances, I feel like Carrow Road, and I said on the podcast last time, I don't think Carrow Road, and Norwich City players really deserve that from the fans. I was really actually quite proud of us and the support that we gave. So now actually there's a new manager and there's almost that new cause to believe in. Yeah, it should be quite exciting. What else? I feel like we've covered most bases here, haven't we? Is there anything else on your list that you want to tick off, and perhaps any? I mean, we might as well cram in the day one predictions, because why the hell not? It's something for us to look back and laugh at in 12 months' time. But is there anything else that perhaps excites you or worries you, maybe?
Yeah, I think you mentioned that willingness, I guess, from the fans to back the team, and we definitely saw that against Leicester. I think we mentioned it actually on the last podcast when that goal went in. That was really loud. You could kind of feel the hairs on your skin start to kind of pluck up a little bit, and I think that's for me the strength of kind of where if he can get it right early doors, and there is going to be that willingness in that home game against Oxford, particularly if they can go to Birmingham on Saturday and produce just something, go there and get a result in any capacity. There is going to be that sort of fire in the belly and maybe that discontentment and that apathetic feeling, the disinterest that a lot of fans have sort of started to feel with the football club will maybe just slowly, very slowly start to turn. But I think everyone going to Carrow next Tuesday night will go there wanting to see a team that's going to win, and they'll back them from minute 1 to minute 90, particularly if what they see on the pitch is a team that's running through brick walls, is willing to fight, and is actually showing that kind of effort level that maybe not that they've not lacked effort. I just think they've lacked everything else really. It's just kind of been the tactical elements, the structural elements, but also the quality at different points, the fitness levels, everything that's been wrong. If you can just start to to get a few of those things right, and they can just get some results, particularly that first home win, that first home point, that will just start to breed that positive feeling a little bit back into the football club. And it won't fix overnight, as you said, and that feeling maybe around some of the executives within the football club at the moment and sort of some of the wider sort of decisions that have been made in recent months. I don't think that's going to change all of that. But football, ultimately, it's easy to say, but wins for fans, it's kind of what we go to football to see. We want to see our team win. And if Norwich win games and they slowly sort of start to narrow that gap and maybe can sort of climb the table, then as much as we might all still feel negative away from sort of the 90 minutes on the pitch, I think, it'll make everyone's weeks better. And if Norwich can get themselves out of this mess, then we'll feel even better about it. And we'll have different content to talk about, which will be nice because, as we've sort of, you said there, for 3 months has been a lot of it. Well, all of it really has been very negative. This has been quite a rare occasion. We've actually been able to look forward to something with a bit of positivity. And, I head to Birmingham on Saturday, actually quite excited. I said this to someone today, it's probably the first time in a while that I've really kind of perked up and felt, yeah, I'm really looking forward to Norwich on Saturday. And that's a good place to be, I think, and a good start. And let's hope we can build from that.
The last thing I want to say is it feels like this appointment was so out of nowhere, and well done to Norwich City for keeping it that tightly sealed. And actually, yesterday night was crazy, wasn't it? The buzz of, oh, it's not O'Neill. Oh, it's not Thomason. Oh my God, who is it? Like that's the public names all ticked off, whilst having the message pushed to us that Norwich had offered the job to their number one candidate. You're like, oh my God, it's almost like watching. I used to be a big fan of the WWE and the Royal Rumble, and who is number 30. And yeah, it's the equivalent of when, well, I don't know who I'd say, when Edge returned for any wrestling fans. That would be my go-to. But it feels like because that choice of head coach is so far from anyone's expectations, actually, it's just another element to unite the Norwich fans. And it feels like the most that we've actually actively, social media wise, engaged in discussion and tried to understand. Because, for example, like when Manning was appointed, it was inevitable. We could all see it coming, and it presented that chance for Bristol City fans to, store loads of doubt in Norwich City fans' minds, and we could actually just think about it and think about it and think about it. Whereas Norwich now have appointed a head coach that we're like, oh, okay, let's learn a little bit and almost be excited about. And actually, he's thrown straight in the deep end, which from an entertainment perspective is great for us. We don't almost have to sort of bore ourselves through pre-season, which is a lot. The risk for that is much lower than right now where Norwich City sit. But this is what football's about, entertainment. And the next few months, hopefully years, and however many more whatevers, not going to be boring by any stretch of imagination. But yeah, there you have it. Our thoughts on Philippe Clement being appointed as Norwich City head coach. We travel. So Adam, you said you're going, didn't you? Travel to Birmingham Saturday. Not going to be an easy game at all. And then it's the just important week at Carrow Road. 2 games that we need 6 points from. And I'm excited. I hope you are too. Your thoughts, please let us know them in the comment section. We're approaching 500 subs. As always, and we're always going to say it, thank you for the support being shown on the channel, all the comments, likes, subscriptions. It truly is wonderful. And thank God we have something else to talk about now, finally. So yeah, from me and Adam, thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.